Welcome to Southern Soul Chats, where this season we will be diving into the stories of individuals who have navigated the deeper waters of faith. I'm your host, Dr. Miranda Ferguson, and together we'll explore the journeys of people who've taken that courageous step forward in their faith. Get ready to be inspired as we uncover the incredible stories of unwavering belief and the remarkable impact it's had. If you're excited to join us on this faith-filled exploration, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Let's step forward. Hey y'all, welcome to Southern Soul Chats. We took the week off last week because we just had a lot of stuff happening. We had our big fundraiser, and it was really more in line too with the theme of what we're going to be talking about today, which we'll get into in just a second. So we are just glad to be back. We'll look at that as like a spring break. We took a spring break. We took a much needed spring break, but we are back and ready to roll through the rest of this season with you guys. So again, thanks for being here. Today we're gonna get off the track we've been on. You know, we do a lot of interviews and we hear God stories, and those are amazing, and I enjoy doing those so much. But today is something a little more of a teaching way of doing things. A lot of times I'll label this as bonus material because it does take us off the beaten path of what we're doing. But I gotta be honest with y'all, these moments don't just come because we don't have somebody to interview or or we just didn't feel like doing it this week. It becomes because the Holy Spirit really starts working on something in me, and I feel like I need to share it. And a lot of times it's not that I need to share it right away. I don't need to just jump on the microphone and be like, let me tell all you guys what God's telling me or what God's doing. It needs to be developed. And so the timing is really perfect. And it felt right. And so we're going to do it. And I say we're because I'm not alone. My dear friend, Leah Dyer, is joining me today.
Hello.
And I'm super excited to have her. I told her here's what happens. God tells me what's going on and I work through it, and then I call Leah and tell Leah.
and then Leah, I tell her what's going on.
And then Leah and I start talking about it. And so as I was you can ask Leah, I actually tried to do this for a few weeks and I just never could execute it. And it never felt right. And then I was still pressing through because I knew it was needed to be done. But I called her and I said, this is going to sound crazy. And I know you've got a lot on your hands because she was neck deep in some things too. And I was like, I really feel like we need to do this together.
Yeah.
And so, and we talked about it and sat in it, and then it just kept circling. It just kept coming back. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is an us thing. We need to do it together. And so we got in track with that. And so today's episode is called, Recharge Your Battery. And listen, I know that's a great title, and you're all thinking, how did you come up with that amazing title? I didn't. I actually was in my vehicle and it started flashing that I needed to recharge the battery in my key fob. I want y'all see just how in depth these really are. But in the moment of seeing it, there was like this God moment where God really revealed to me how there's so many things in our life we need to recharge.
Yep.
And that we count on these batteries, right? We just go we have a box, an Amazon box full of batteries. And I just go in there and dig through and see if I can find the battery I need and stick it in whatever needs to be recharged. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But today we're not talking about recharging in the way of going into the box or to the cabinet and getting AA's, AAA's, DC's, whatever your number is, whatever letter you need. Today we are exploring a very sacred concept of Sabbath, a practice deeply rooted in Scripture, yet overlooked in the modern, fast-paced times of our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I think about that is it's included in the commandments, but we just be like, well.
Oh, that one.
Like, I get don't murder, and I get don't covet, but Sabbath. Oh, I'm supposed to honor that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Is that one down the street around the corner?
And there's not a lesser commandment in that case.
Exactly. And so the thing is this started for me when I was in New York. So I went to New York with my mom and my sister. It was our first time to do a trip together like that. And I've been to New York before as a younger teen, and I was very taken back by the lights and the fast-paced living, because here's a little country girl from Saraland, Alabama. There was nothing fast-paced about my life growing up. And so it drew me in when I was younger, and it really stuck to me that I thought that that's where I actually thought when I was younger that that's where I would be. I wanted to go to fashion design school. I wanted to work in New York. All these things. Like, I wanted that life, the lights, the fast. I just always felt pulled to not be in Saraland, Alabama.
It's really interesting too, because for me, I used to go to New York to do all my auditions. And so New York was always a place that was really crazy and stressful. And I always wanted to get home. Because it was always noise and activity, and I kind of fed off that environment. And so I can remember like coming back after doing audition season as a young singer and laying in my bedroom at home and hearing like a cricket and oh, they exist, you know, it's like because I had been
stars in the sky.
Yeah, because I had been surrounded by noise and hustle and bustle. So it's funny, two totally different perspectives, probably in the same age, too, around the same age.
Yeah. And so what was crazy about this trip to New York was not the fact that I was there with my mom or sister. It wasn't the fact that, New York hasn't changed. Let me reassure you.
Go figure.
Yeah. If you haven't been there in a while, it's exactly what you remember. Maybe a little worse, honestly. But what was funny was that there was a lot of things happening in my life, and I wasn't even sure if I could really make the New York trip.
Right.
And if I'm being completely honest, I wasn't really sure I wanted to make the New York trip, not because of what the trip was for. It's for my sister's birthday, so clearly I wanted to do that.
Yeah, that's fun.
I just didn't know within myself if I could be in that space and enjoy it the way I needed to be with them.
You had a lot on your plate.
There was a lot on my plate. There was a lot happening in my life personally. There was a lot happening in my marriage. Like, there was just a lot.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't sure. And so we were down to, I even told my sister, like, I'm not sure if I can go. And we were even working through all that. But I did. I went. But what God did is what God does best. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about me going to New York and being with my sister and my mom. Mm-mm. Now, we did have a great time and we enjoyed each other. We celebrated her birthday. It was great. But God really met me in New York the way he meets me places like Nashville and other places that I'll go, and he shows up and says, hey, we had an appointment. And I go, hey, I thought I was here for something else. Cool. So what happened is, as we were doing the fast-paced life, because if you've been to New York, I mean, you're either walking a lot or riding a lot, but you're not sleeping a lot. Nope. You're not sleeping a lot. So I first realized that New York was not, I didn't feel the same way about New York that I did as a teenager. Mm-hmm. I didn't see the lights as being glitzy and glamoury. I didn't see the hustle and bustle as being attractive. Those were all things that I thought about New York. Even, that was the impression left in me, right? Mm-hmm. But this time I saw it with a different set of eyes. It was almost like I was removed from myself. And I saw these people just trying to hurry and get somewhere. Mm-hmm. I saw people looking at Times Square in awe at 1:00 in the morning, like they had never seen anything so amazing. Mm-hmm. And God really started working about how my life is so busy and so hurried, and how I'm watching these people stand in awe of nothing. Yeah. And I don't mean it ugly. But they're there and they're taken back, and look to this side and there's an Elmo jumping around, and look to that side and Spider-Man's off here. And if you look really quick at the subway, there's a big fire truck because apparently something's going on. They're clearing the street out. Like, there is no absence of craziness.
It's chaos. Yeah.
In this town.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what time it is.
That's true. It's a city that never sleeps.
These people don't sleep, and they are in awe. You can tell a New Yorker from a vacationist.
Yeah, you can.
Like, the New Yorkers just walk. They just go.
Yeah, they're just doing their thing.
But the vacation folks, the folks that are there to take it all in, there's a lot of them, and they're snapping pictures, and they're dancing with Elmo, and they're standing in lines for Broadway shows. But it's hustle.
It is.
It's hustle. Mm-hmm. And so I really started feeling the tug about living a life, enjoying and living a life that's not a hustle. And me understanding how to slow that life down, because I have a normal life, right? I have a lot of kids. Mm-hmm. I have a husband. I have, family, friends. My life is not slow.
No.
my life is far from slow, but it's not always because I set myself up. And I'm not my biggest helper.
It's just life. Yeah.
Yeah. My life is just a busy life with lots of children. And when you have lots of kids, you get pulled in lots of directions. And we try to manage that as best as we can.
And a new nonprofit,
Right. And we have a new nonprofit. Let's not forget that. So being there, I started just seeing things differently, and God was really talking to me about what is really something I should be in awe about, and how sad it is that people are finding their awe moments in flashy lights and busy streets.
Yep.
Chanel purses, Louis Vuitton lines.
Yeah.
And I started really feeling the tug of being like, okay, Lord, what does this mean? And that really started, that trip in New York, it really started me down the path of coming home and being like, why are so many people caught up in the glitz and glamour of this world when you have done so much that's so far bigger than this?
Yeah.
And it started there, and then it evolved to really Sabbath and what it means to sit and not be caught up in the glitz and the glam of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Even family.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also interesting too, to just consider, and it's not necessarily a comment, I'm not trying to make a point here, but just an observation, is that for many people, the worship experience on Sunday is even glitz and glam now. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
You know, I see value in most styles of worship, honestly, but I think even there, if you're trying to get away from chaos, loud noises, flashing lights, you may not even be able to do that in a church service. And so the discipline of Sabbath has lots of meanings, I think, for different people and different worship communities. And it's something that's really just important for us to examine.
Well, that's a good point too, because it really pushes back the responsibility of not being the church to be your place of Sabbath, because maybe you can't. Maybe it's not the church you go to. Like you said, maybe it's a different style. Maybe it's not your life. Like my life is not conducive to Sabbath. Sorry.
Not in the way that we might have traditionally defined it. Yeah.
Right. It's just not. So that means that there's a responsibility that I have as a Christian who's linked to God and who is dwelling in his presence to say, okay, how do I do my part? And so what that did, and we'll get into this more, but what that did is I came back, still had a lot of things going on. I'm trying to sort through that in my brain. I'm trying to like work through it, talk through it, figure it out. What does it look like? And it just led me, Sabbath just kept circling, Sabbath. And so I thought, what do I really know about Sabbath?
Yeah.
Like, what do I really know?
Yeah.
No, y'all, I've been in church my whole entire life. So, and again, when I say responsibility, I'm talking about my responsibility as a believer to do my own work. But if we're just being honest again, which that's how I am here, is I'm just honest. Yeah, you just get. I have relied on the church to be the feeder of knowledge. I haven't always gone out and said, well, let me just go on my own search for this. How about I search with God? I'll show up at church and be like, hey, what are you going to put on my plate?
Yeah, expecting to be served.
Expecting to be served. And then that just be enough to carry through to the next season. But God's been working on me, especially since when the nonprofit started and then figuring out the path of the nonprofit and working through and all the different things. God's really broken me away from the church being my main source of my main meal, my main course.
That's what I think about the being on milk or being spoon-fed versus being equipped to prepare a meal on your own to feast on.
And so that's been an experience.
There's value in all of it, really. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody to walk away here being like, oh, y'all are bashing the church. No, this is not a church
Church is very important.
Yes, church is huge and it's very important. I'm just saying that there's a responsibility as a believer to go deeper with God on your own time.
Yep.
And I didn't always value that. So I'm putting this on me.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm taking this back to me, right? That there's, we have a responsibility to meet God outside of thinking the church should just provide everything and that's enough.
Yeah.
Because God sometimes is directing you in a different path than what the church is teaching. That's all great and you need that stuff, but sometimes he's got let's me and you go here. And that's where this was birthed. I said all that to say that this was birthed because God is surely trying to teach me something and I don't find it to be I'm so lucky he decided to do this. I really think this is a part of a growth process for me as I move through the work God's calling me to do, is that I need to learn how to do this because I think it's one of the ways you survive through doing it. It's one of the ways you maintain.
Well, and when you're a go-getter, like you
Who's
are.
a go-getter?
Yeah, I know, like you are, or like I am. You know, I think that has its own challenges associated with it, and what are we trying to go and get? Is what I would say. And what Sabbath does is it literally stops us in our tracks, and it says, "You're trying to get closer to me." That's what you're doing.
It's no more what am I trying to get? It's who am I trying to get?
Yeah.
Or who am I trying to get to?
Yep.
And I think that's been a big absence for a really long time, because I felt like Sunday, Wednesdays, whatever days I'm at the church, then that's your time, Lord. But in the big scheme of things, those little couple of hours, it really doesn't do it for me.
Well, that's part of it, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's a
the
piece
whole
of the
thing.
puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a piece of
It's
the
an
puzzle.
important part of it, but yeah, it's not the whole thing.
Yeah, so here we are. That led to Sabbath. And so what I did was, now not counting this past weekend, because I had to work for the past weekend for the nonprofit, which was a whole weekend thing. But I made up for that on the backside. I'll circle back around to that.
You exercised rest.
But the 2 weekends prior to that, so the last 2 weekends of March, I really wanted to see, okay, I was reading about Sabbath, like, how do I do this? Can I do this? Like, y'all got to understand, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, there's some things I've realized that I didn't really understand about Sabbath until I said, okay, Lord, I'm all in. Let's do it. So I took a Saturday. I took 2 Saturdays, the 2 Saturdays before pickleball, because this is where I was in my studying and my thinking. And I said nothing. I prepared my whole week so that Saturday there would be nothing. So we're talking like no washing clothes, no opening my laptop, no checking my emails. Did y'all hear that? I did not.
Before a pickleball tournament.
I did not check my emails. Text. I mean, like, I shut it down, not in the sense that I sat in a dark room and didn't do anything, but all the things that I do that keep me busy, I didn't do them. And I thought about Jennifer Robertson, because she had spoke a few summers back, and she was talking about Sabbath and some things they do. Like, she was talking about they have crock pot meals. They don't wash dishes. They throw it away. So I was taking these little tidbits, right, of things I've heard and said, okay, these are great, but what does it look like for me? And so the first Saturday was super hard.
Yeah. You called me. You're like, this.
So let me tell you, the very first Saturday, I woke up. I had planned. I thought, okay, I need to spend more time with my family. My kids get shuffled a lot in the busyness. And maybe everybody else is better at that than I am, but they do. So there was an event happening close to our house. It was something geared for kids. I knew they would love it. I knew it would be fun. We would have to disconnect. It would take us out of our house, because I saw my house as being a hindrance. If I'm in my house, then I see all the things that I haven't accomplished, and then I feel guilty. Yeah. I go, oh, there's that. I'll do it real quick. So I got up that morning, and I was just getting ready. We got the kids ready. I was in there, and I had my cell phone on the counter, and I was looking at stuff. I was looking at email. I was thinking about. I had a notebook and a piece of paper, and I was writing things for pickleball down that was coming to my mind. And this went on for like 30 minutes, and then I stopped and went, "Oh, I didn't even realize it. Like, that's how bad it was. I did not even realize that I was working when I wasn't working." And I went, "Oh, this is gonna be difficult." So then I was super conscious about it. So I said, "Okay, no. I can do this." I think.
Question mark. I can do this.
I can do this. So to make a long story short, we left the house. I left the phone. I didn't take it. I had it, but I didn't have it like out. Right. So we took the kids to this fun event, and they were having a great time. We were really just enjoying them, going from thing to thing to thing to thing. And it was good. Until the vomit started.
I'm laughing ahead of time because I know what's coming. So much vomit.
Until the vomit started. So what I didn't know pre-Sabbath get ready for was that my child was going to bring home a viral virus.
Stomach
bug. And we were all going to be in Sabbath.
And we got forced to Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it started with one
Which
kid.
he will do. He will do it.
Yes.
That's my life story, is that.
Yeah. So
Sabbath.
it started with one of my kids who would be the one who would need me the most, who would want the mommy the most. And so that ended up getting home, getting very, very sick, me having to lay in the bed with him, give him medicine. I mean, this was a really bad virus. And so, so literally I didn't have to worry about Sabbath because I was laying in the bed and had nothing else to do.
You were bonding and ministering to your child.
I was, and a lot of thinking and reflecting back about the day and how I was a little frustrated because I thought I'd made a perfect plan and it was going to be a great day, and it did start that way. But then I landed in the bed, which ended up me landing in the bed for a couple of days because I was the next one down, followed by the next two, and
very sick. Yeah,
it went on for days. So I got to spend a lot of time resting, praying, talking to God. I was like, is this what Sabbath looks like, Lord?
Being too weak to get out of bed.
Yeah, it's like, I can't even reach the Gatorade. I don't even want it.
And the answer is yes. Sometimes that's what my story, God literally had to force me.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah. He did the thing. So we got through the stomach bug, though it took a hot minute because we had a delayed kid get sick later, which ran into the next weekend. But I was already determined I was going to try this. I was going to do it on Saturday again. Like Saturday was going to be my day. Because when people are probably going, why not Sunday? It's a church day. Sunday is a work day for me in the sense that I have to work to get my kids up. We have to hurry home because they're starving. I don't find rest on Sundays. It's never been a restful day.
That's probably true for people in ministry too. Sunday is a work day for them. That's why a lot of them take off Monday or Friday.
And a lot of times we do praise team, which means I'm there at 6:00 in the morning and I don't get home till 1:00 in the afternoon. I've already worked I've already worked all day.
Yeah.
And even though, and I love it, but it's not a day where I find that's not a day. So it made sense to me to try for Saturday. Plus it gave me time to devote to my kids. I was trying to do all these things I was reading about and encompassing.
Yeah.
So the next Saturday we practiced Sabbath again. I did. This has been a me thing. I practiced Sabbath, and most of the power people were well. But the things I started noticing was that my head was a little clearer. I was more intentional with my children. I wasn't so rushed and let's go from this to this and now it's bedtime. Throw yourself in bed and I'm gonna run down here. Even though we did still have a sick kid in the house, everybody else was well. There was an awkwardness about it too because I didn't know how to behave.
How do we fill the time? You feel like we have to fill it.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, I'm always, everything's about the clock, always. And lately I've had a lot of people ask me for whatever reason, I don't know why. They'll say, well, what do you enjoy doing? Like, what's your hobby? Well, I don't have a hobby. I enjoy working.
Yeah.
I love what I do. I loved when I was a teacher. I love doing, like, I don't have a hobby. I don't knit. I don't stitch. I don't cross. I don't really have a hobby because every day I feel pleased and blessed and joyful just to do what I do. So I don't need a hobby.
Right.
Plain and simple. But what I've realized, especially in the midst of studying this week, is that I might love what I do a little too much.
Yeah.
I might have made it more about me than what it really is. And that's why I feel so much.
Yeah.
Like I just love it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's good to love what you do, I think. Excuse me. Goodness. It's good to love what you do, but we have to make sure we don't love it more than other things that we're supposed to put on the throne. Right.
We put it ahead of the stuff. So when Leah and I were talking about it, we said, okay, it's good to explain to you guys, how did I land here? Why did this just kind of become a way? And then the next weekend, like I said, was not able to practice it on the weekend because we had our fundraiser, our biggest fundraiser of the year, and God really showed up in big ways for that.
Yeah, it was great.
And it was a wonderful weekend, and just so blessed to see God move in so many ways. But what I knew before it even ended was that I was going to have to do something I never do, and that was literally take Sabbath for a week.
Recover, yeah.
Like I could feel it.
Yep.
And I don't think I would have recognized that if I had not had the 2 Saturdays prior, because there was like a pull. And that pool's never been there.
A desire for rest.
Yeah, I've never had a pool that said, hey, why don't you just take some time off?
He leads you beside still waters and restores your soul.
And so I did.
Makes you lie down.
And so I did. for probably the first time in a really long time, I just said no. So when I came home Sunday, there was a lot of people saying, are you going to do this? Or are you going to do that? When are we going to have this? Because after a fundraiser, there's still a lot of work to do. And I had texts going off. I had emails going off. I had people, calling, asking. And these were all very valid requests.
Yeah.
They weren't like outlandish things. But I did something very out of my character, which was respond to all of them. I'm off until next Monday. I need time to rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need time to get my affairs back in order. I need time to see my children. I need time to talk to my husband. I just need time to not think.
Yep.
And I'm going to do it. So we didn't podcast. Matter of fact, I even tried, if I'm always honest here, I actually had something that was going on, and there was a topic, and I felt like, oh, this would be great. We can get it in on Sunday. And the person got sick out of nowhere.
There you go.
I'm talking like, well, to me saying, hey, let's do this. And they were in my bathroom, sick as a dog. Didn't even get to tell them. Never even made it there. And they were sick all through the next day. So it was like God was going, hey, I'm not going to, no. No. And so I did for the last week of my life, up until today, because now clearly I'm working
On Sunday.
on Sunday, but I had all the other days of Sabbath, so it's okay. So I did. I have sat in Sabbath all week.
Let's take a moment to actually talk about Sabbath and what it is, because there might be some people who've been listening to this and are going, well, okay, so what is this Sabbath thing you're talking about?
What is this thing that you're sitting and doing nothing? How odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that moves us into talking about like the biblical foundation of it.
Yeah.
What it is, and that's so that you have an idea of where this little roadmap is going. We're going to talk about the biblical foundation of it, and then we're going to move into the relevance for today.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about practical application, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
So that's how we're going to move through today. So, I mean, you guys, the Bible, Genesis, it's like in the first few chapters.
It is. It is.
And I think it gets overlooked a little bit. I think that when it talks about how God rested on the seventh day of creation, sanctifying it as a day of rest, I think we just read through it and go, oh, okay, he needed a break.
Yeah.
The God who doesn't get tired.
Yeah. He doesn't need a break.
Ever.
Yeah. He wanted to sit back and look at all the things that were good that he made and demonstrate what it means to do that.
Yeah. And I even called Leah this week and I was like, Leah, I'm really thinking that the Bible is just like a roadmap. Not that I didn't know that. I was being silly, but I was like, time after time, the more I read, the more new concepts I see. I see things differently, right? And throughout the Bible, it's a modeling.
Yep.
It's a huge modeling. God didn't do this because he needed a nap, y'all.
There's something really interesting about that I was reading when I was researching for this. And it said, like, if you, a lot of rabbis would teach about this, but basically you have the 6 days of creation, and they say there was like the day and then there was night, the day and then there was night. But on the day that God rested, they don't say there was night.
Yeah, it's like just an existence.
Yeah, and so it's a popular belief for many that it signifies the fact that God's rest, the ability for us to rest in Him, is never ending. It's always there. It's still a day set apart. He didn't do work that day, but He looked at the work that He did and enjoyed it. Yeah,
And said, yeah, like,
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So here's some words. So here's some words I learned. Let's play what words do we learn?
Woot, woot.
So there's Shabbat.
Yes.
So this is the Hebrew form, okay? And Shabbat means, or let me say, in English, you'll hear Sabbath. So that's where Shabbat is the Hebrew, but you'll hear in English terms Sabbath, and we'll refer to as Sabbath. But Shabbat means to cease or desist. I found that extremely interesting.
Cease and desist.
Because at first, I knew Shabbat meant Sabbath and Sabbath means rest. But when you see it like this, I thought about it in the terms of law. Cease and desist. Like when you get a letter, that is serious business.
Yeah, don't mess around.
It means stop. Whatever you're doing, here's a letter that comes and it says stop. Now. Right now. So when I read Shabbat meaning cease or desist, it was stop now.
One of the articles I read said it's like you clock out of work. You cease working. The moment you clock out, you're done.
Yeah. You're done. But unfortunately, like when we clock out of work, we don't really clock out of work.
Yeah, I think it's even harder now that so many people work from home. It's a big problem I ran into when I was a professor, because they're still grading and all sorts of other things you have to do.
And if you have kids, you're running into this and that,
Right.
which we in research do is just over and over again showing the examples of what we think is life, but really is just another form of work that we just pick up and plug in the spot. Like we move from this work to that work to whatever work. And then another word, you're going to have to pronounce this one.
I don't know if it's correct or not. Is it nuak? I think is what it is. Is that right? Does that what you
I
wrote
feel
down?
like, yeah, that's the word.
I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. For all my friends who understand Hebrew, please forgive me.
And nuak means to dwell.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too on that one, is it like it's when in Genesis 2, it says, it talks about he stopped, there's a ceasing. But then when we see that word nuak means to like dwell or settle in, it's like this idea of like sitting with someone you really love in a comfortable environment and just being with them in the presence. And that's actually the term that they used to describe when he placed Adam in the garden. That idea that he's gonna dwell in and be a part of resting kind of in God's presence. So it's a different meaning.
So I wrote down for the Genesis, I wrote down that God rested and then he dwelled within his creation and his people.
Yep, he did.
And those two words there, Shabbat being rest and the Naku, is that what we're saying?
Nuach, or I don't know. I might be saying it wrong. I've got Ruach in my head, which is when the names for the Holy Spirit, like we're talking about the wind of the Holy Spirit. So if I'm saying that wrong, please everyone forgive me.
We are not having
I'm not
Hebrew
a
class
scholar.
today.
God knows what we mean.
That's right. That's right. But so God's intent for Sabbath from the beginning was a unity with God. Like it was for us to have a unity with God, creation, each other.
To marvel in the wonder of what he accomplishes. Yeah.
Right. To look back and take a minute to go, where did I see God in this?
Yeah.
Where did God move here?
Yeah.
What's God speaking to me?
Yep.
I also love that when you research this topic, it talks about how Sabbath gives you an opportunity to start living in the future, meaning that the way you're going to eternally live with God in his presence and dwelling in creation, a creation you can't even imagine, that your brain can't even like comprehend, but that this is practice.
Yeah.
This is a practice, that this is how you're going to live your life.
Yeah.
And I've never really sat down and thought about that, like going to heaven, living life eternally, but what does that really look like? And Sabbath is an example.
It is.
To prepare you to be able to live that life eternally with God. And I was just like, whoo!
Yeah. I mean,
holy moly.
Well, and I think like was one of the things I was looking up when I was doing this is like, is work a bad word? Like we're talking about it like it's a sin to work, right? And that's not what we mean. But I think to understand that the curse that happened in Eden changed what work was, right?
Yes.
So God worked to create the earth, and he sat back with joy, not a sense of burden or exhaustion, and just marveled at what he had accomplished, right? And then he puts Adam and Eve in the garden. Well, Adam first, but then Eve in the garden, and he tells them, tend to this, work with this, make it thrive. So the work wasn't a bad word there either. It was an opportunity. I think of the satisfaction I get when I'm in my garden and I plant a seed and then I see it grow, right? And so in the garden, that's what they would have seen. God planted Eden, and then he says, go in there and tend it. Now, is it to assume that God didn't finish and like Adam's got to finish getting the garden ready or something? No.
God didn't do his part.
No, it implies that there's joy in tending the soil or tending the plants or watching life emerge or being able to pick a fruit off a tree and eat it as long as it's the right fruit, right? So the work that God asked Adam and then Eve to do in the garden was tending for, caring for, their own version of creating, making sure life is sustained and all those beautiful things that they would have done in union with him, right? And then the curse comes along because they basically bite off more than they can chew, quite literally. And they have this knowledge that work can be something else. So this is when we start the curse, right? So what is it called when a woman gives birth to a baby? Labor. It's work. So there's an example of work. It might bring something beautiful, but what is it while you're doing it? Painful, hard, exhausting. It taxes you, right? And we see the curse that the dirt itself was cursed, that Adam came from, and that the rest of his life he would toil. So it's not the work that's wrong. It's the hold that the work has over us. It's the fact that I have to work to survive, or I have to work to feel like I am accomplishing something, or I want more things, so I'm a slave to work so I can earn them, get them. And so what it does is it takes something that God made beautiful, and I believe can still be beautiful in the world that we live in. But if we choose to lean in, almost involuntarily, like you did on that morning where you were like, I've been on my phone for 30 minutes and I didn't even realize it. It cheats us of the blessing of being able to make God Lord over our work. And so I think I wanted to explain that because I thought about it and I thought, this is a commandment. Like, we're breaking the commandments. But it's not, are we breaking commandments if we work? No. So anyway, I guess that's a little side thing, but I think it's an important thing to consider because even Jesus faced opposition with the Pharisees and Sadducees about this very topic, what constitutes work? And so with Sabbath, I think it forces us to realign. Like you said, it kind of forces us to go, okay, what am I striving for? Who am I striving for? And it's interesting. We'll even chase rest. So we plan big vacations that take all this effort and all this time and all this money so we can get away to rest, and we exhaust ourselves doing it, right? So the curse is that we feel like we always have to strive, and the blessing is Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And it was modeled.
It's the reset.
Well, and here's what's interesting. Sabbath was modeled before the curse.
Before the fall.
Before the fall of man, God already was modeling that rest and reveling and enjoying it and dwelling is part of the blessing of creation. What was the whole thing? The creation of the earth, the universe, everything is dripping with life and creativity and beauty, right? Mm-hmm. And so that means that Sabbath rest that God chose, not because he needed it, like a broken human body needs it, right? But because he wanted to just look, taste, and see that he's good, right? Mm-hmm. That's dripping with life and beauty and love. So I think it's really important to understand that. Sabbath is not some punishment or some, Yeah,
it's not like hey, sorry, you have to give your day up.
No.
And dread it the whole time.
It's you get to lay it down.
I looked somewhere when I was reading, somebody made the statement. I forgot to write down who said it. It wasn't me.
Maybe I know. I'll tell you.
Maybe so. It's that it's not just that it's a law or commandment that we are chained to, right? Like, okay, God made this commandment and you're chained to do it, so you must do it. It's not that. It's a promise that we're invited to enjoy.
It's amazing. Yes. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a promise. And I shared with you a few weeks ago that through doing this, I started realizing that God invites us to do a lot of things.
He does.
And then I had this moment where I was thinking about sometimes the things God invites us to are difficult.
Yeah.
Not because they're difficult, like he made it hard for me to do it. It's difficult because what am I willing to lay aside to do it? Mm-hmm. And I told you I had this moment where I thought about the tithe. And how, God asked me about my finances. He asked me to give 10% of my finances back.
Yeah.
But when it comes to rest, he's asking me to sacrifice a day of my time and give it back. Well, tithing's hard because that's my money, right? That's my money.
That
and
you worked hard to
that
earn.
I worked hard
There
to
you
earn.
go.
And I have all these bills that I've acquired and I have to pay them because, if you don't, then your credit's messed up and they'll take all your stuff back, right? And so that's why it's so important to tithe first, because it's not what's left over that I'm just going to throw at God.
Fruits, yeah.
It's the first. It's what I give you first in exercising my faith that you'll take the rest and it'll be enough. And what, you give it and then that's my offering, right? So I realized that my rest was also an offering. And the reason it was hard for me because that's my time.
Yeah.
That's when I should be doing something. That's when I should be washing clothes or checking my emails. I can work a little harder for you, Lord. I can cram it in here and stuff it over there and shoo my kids off and let mommy finish this last thing. And honey, I'll get to that later. But I really need to finish this so I can feel accomplished. He's not asking for that.
No. And it's really is tyranny of the urgent. I think there was one time when I was a student, and then I transferred it over to when I was teaching too, but I had this list that I loved and it was called the accomplish list. And
that sounds like a wonderful list. Tell me more.
But it had like, to-do lists can just pile up in your head, right? And what this did is it prioritized it, took it and sectioned it off. And like, this has to be done today. This can be done tomorrow. This can be done next week. This one will probably never be done. And that's how you prioritized what you had to do. And what I realized is we have this exhausting compulsion as humans to do. John Tyson calls it workism. He's not the only one, but in his book, Beautiful Resistance, he talks about the resistance against workism and learning that rest is actually a spiritual discipline. That's very important. And so I think we like to find value, particularly, I would say, in American society. I don't want to speak for other societies and cultures, but in productivity, in doing, in producing, and honestly, in consuming. And so I can remember one time, like when I was in college and I used up a thing of shampoo, and I was like, oh, that felt gratifying. Now I can go get another one. And I thought, oh, consumerism. There it is. And so it's exhausting. It's a burden. And, we hear Paul, Jesus, Peter, so many people in scripture talk about that burden of work, of earning, of proving. We struggle with it not just in relationships on this planet or in our work, but also in our spiritual lives, trying to strive, trying to earn, trying to work to earn things that really are beyond our control. And the reality of it is, if we really, really looked at all the things that we think are first, we would realize that they can wait. And that tithe that you're talking about is a tithe of time. And what that says is nothing surpasses the relationship with the Father. Seek Him first. Commit your plans to the Lord, and then they'll be established. You will seek me if you seek me with your whole heart. Even the scriptures that talk about Him having a plan and a purpose for your life, it still says you have to seek Him wholeheartedly. We need to tithe our time first. I don't give God my leftovers. Sunday, if that's the day, you choose, is not the end of my week. It's the beginning. It's the renewal. And so that's actually why some people believe in the early church, they switched it to Sunday, actually. Because it's the first day of the week for a lot of people.
And not to get caught up here again. Like, we're not trying to catch up on there should be a certain day.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's why.
The emphasis of this conversation is more about the importance of the purpose, not the legalism.
No.
Of trying to figure out the right way to do it, the wrong way to do it, the rules of doing it.
Well, and that's really important to point out, because Jesus faced that legalism with the Pharisees all the time. But it's really significant. Jesus healed on the Sabbath 7 times. That was considered a sin to them. And in one point, and it's in Mark, he basically says, what am I supposed to do? Is the Sabbath for good or for evil? Is it for death? Or for life? He's basically saying, guys, come on. Like, one of them, he heals this woman who's a paralytic, and she's been under this bondage for like 18 years. And they get on to him about healing her on the Sabbath. And he said, what do you want me to do? If you had a donkey or something that was thirsty, would you not untie the rope? Because there was even law about not untying knots on Sabbath, because that would be considered work.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you not want me? Would you not, if your donkey was thirsty, would you not untie his thing and take him over to get water? Like, this person has been in bondage for 18 years. Why would I make her suffer one more day just to honor this law? And that's what he was trying to bury into their heads. Their legalism about Sabbath actually got in the way of the mercy, the beauty, the gift, the blessing of Sabbath. And he calls himself basically Lord of the Sabbath at one point. When they start questioning him, he's like, guys, like, I have authority over this. I can say what constitutes like Sabbath or not, guys, like
Checkmate.
And he quotes some of their old scriptures to prove it, and he gives examples of it. So the legalism of it comes in when we still try to make Sabbath work. This is what,
and we try to control.
Oh my goodness.
We still try to control, because that's like trying to guide it. Because I think think about it. The reason why work works so well is because you have a plan.
Oh yeah. And it's gratifying to see it come to completion. You know,
and you know that you're going to do it, and this is how you're going to do it. And you're good at doing it, and you're doing it. But when it comes to a day where you take a day or a week, try a week, y'all.
Yep.
There is no plan. Mm-mm. There's a lostness in that. I mean, if we're just being honest, right? Like, there's a lostness in going, my everything in me is telling me to go do something.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
Well, and the thing about this is that, like, it is important to understand, like, we live on this planet, right? And there's responsibilities that we have. Some people are not in a position even financially where they can't work certain days or something. And so it's not to bring shame to that, but I think what it's to do is understand that what we do can have restorative properties too, if we do it under the right mindset with our spirit aligned. And so God understands that aspect of us, that work aspect. He created us with it. The curse is what twisted it, right? So it's not that he's saying, don't do anything. What he's saying is realign your doing with who I am. Look at your identity. Take a moment to think about who I am. I was talking to you earlier about when the word, when he says consider the ravens, when Jesus is talking about like God providing for them, they don't have to, they see the lilies, they don't have to toil or spin. And I know I'm paraphrasing and probably getting some of the attributions incorrect there, but basically the word consider actually is saying, like, look into it. When you see that, allow yourself to go into a deeper state of thought about that and recognize that even the ravens that God created are telling the story of provision, of rest. And if you're too busy and the ravens are zooming by you because you're so consumed by work and fear of the future, you won't pick up on that. You won't see it. So you can do things on Sabbath. You worship with other people. You enjoy a meal together. You spend time with your family. You play games. You read a book. You go take a nature hike. It's not, and that's what I was getting back to. I think that one of the problems we ran into is if you look at like in the Jewish law, because this is part of the law that God gave Moses. We do have the Sabbath being part of the 10 Commandments. And I think that's important to consider.
Just a little, Leah.
It's important to consider, right? this is a command that God gave us, right?
Yep.
But when we see in the New Testament, when Jesus talks about it, Paul talks about it, he says, guys, wait, make sure you're not getting off base with what this actually is. Because the Jewish rabbis, the Pharisees, they took the commandment and then they made like books and books and books of additional laws. Even like rules about what, if you could put oil on your body, if that counted as, they had all these rules. You can't pick something up from the ground. You can't write more than 2 letters of the alphabet on Sabbath. So they took Sabbath rest and made it work with legalism is what they did.
Yeah. Hard work. Yeah.
I read somewhere recently that some people even employ people to flip their light switches on Sabbath because technically it's work. So if you start doing all of that, it's not honoring the purpose of Sabbath, which really is freedom. It's freedom. It's freedom from the burden of being on a broken earth. It's freedom from striving. It's freedom from trying to earn approval of God or of man. And it's freedom to just make space to bask in his goodness, his presence, and the beauty of what he's created and receive it as a gift. Because what Jesus did for us is he made heaven, that eternal rest like you were talking about, possible. He's our bridge. He made that possible for us. And so we're looking ahead at the rest that will come, but we're also basking in the fact that we don't have to wait to experience rest.
Yeah, we can have it here now.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so it's not just a promise for a future. It is that, but it's also a promise that's relevant for the present. And that's really important.
Yeah, I love what you said. I have it in my notes about you said make space. I have make room.
Yeah.
Sabbath, it makes room for God.
Yeah.
It says, I put everything aside.
Yeah.
I'm going to, all the things that I value, all the things I think make me, like giving my self-worth, my self-value, the things that make me feel productive, meaningful. I mean, we could go on and on with this list.
Yeah.
It pushes those aside and says, as your creation, who am I, Lord?
Oh, it's the identity alignment. And I think this is really important. In my own life and in my own story, I loved my work. And I just got sicker and sicker and sicker. And eventually I had to step away from work and it felt like a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And then God got in there and he was like, what are we doing, Leah? Why is this a death sentence? I thought the scripture, why are you so downcast over my soul? Like, what is your purpose, Leah? And I think, how much importance do we place on our productivity? When I became someone who was labeled as having a disability, did I think my worth diminished somehow? No. At first, yes, because of the society I live in. But would I look at somebody else who had a disability and be like, oh, they're worthless? Absolutely never.
Right.
Not at all. And I was just reading something right before we started that was really cool. And it said, if you notice that the Sabbath is paired with honoring of your parents, saying when you get old, what do? You retire. They still have value. They still have worth. It's not linked to a career.
Right.
It's not linked to that.
But it's acceptable because they've retired.
Yeah, because they did their duty.
They served their time and they've retired.
But
so it's okay for them to rest.
Yeah, but the reality of that is that's not our worth comes from the fact that we are created by the God of the universe and he loves us. Our worth comes from the fact that he sent his son to become way less than he was. You want to talk about Jesus having important work to do in heaven? I'm sure he did, but he considered the work he was doing here as important too. And so Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath in that way too. Like our rest comes from him. And it's really interesting too, because if you look in Matthew, before Matthew gives the accounts of all the healings that Jesus did on the Sabbath, he does the "Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest, and take my yoke upon you, because my burden is light," right? Learn of me, walk with me, study, and you will understand that I'm going to give you rest for your souls. And I think this is super significant and really important, particularly when you take it in context culturally. These Jews for so long had been trying to be perfect. They had been working their tails off to follow every single rule. And they probably did not experience rest on Sabbath a lot of the time, because they were just trying to make sure they didn't break the rules of Sabbath, right?
Yeah, they were so busy trying to stay within the law.
Because it was important. They recognized the significance of it. They didn't want to make the mistake that their ancestors had made.
Right.
We see all of that. But it's just really important to understand that these were people who were weary. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, even in ministry, there's a lot of time where I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta just sit here and rest. Like, I've gotta lay down the burden. I can't carry this burden, because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And that's so significant when read in context, in order of the book of Matthew, for example. And Paul does the same thing in Romans. We see it. He starts it off by explaining that this is not by works. This is faith.
It's an action.
Yeah.
I started realizing that everything requires an action.
Yeah, but sometimes the action is to shut up and sit still.
Yeah.
And that's
But
and
I still
that's
have to
what
do
we
my
struggle
part
at.
and shut up and being still. So I stumbled to Walter Brugman, and I probably said his last name wrong, but that's okay.
Sorry, Walter.
Sorry, Walter. But he said that Sabbath is difficult because it's a rebellion against the world.
Yes.
So when we practice Sabbath, we are rebelling against what the world tells us. So that can be whatever narrative you're hearing,
We're
right?
resisting. Yeah.
Right. Work harder, meet the deadlines, run here, run there, be busy, know it all, achieve. If you don't achieve, you're going to get replaced. If you get replaced, you're no good. All the value system. So we run it around, right? Yep. And so being in Sabbath, in the day of Sabbath, sitting in a day of Sabbath, it says, I reject that idea.
Yep.
I go against what the world's telling me. I'm standing up to that. I'm saying, just say no.
Yep.
And I'm just going to be still before God. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's a rebellion, because you're nowhere going to see on the radio or on TV.
So you guys are rebels if you exercise Sabbath. For all of you bad boys and girls out there.
Have you ever wanted to be a rebel for Christ? This is how to start it. So Sabbath says no to the culture of now.
Yeah.
That's what Sabbath
and the tyranny
says.
of the urgent.
Yes.
Or the workism, or
Yes.
whatever it is. Yeah. We have a religious devotion to productivity.
Yes.
It's a serious problem.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because my next point is that taking a Sabbath also is a break from our idols. And guess what one of those idols is? Work. It's crazy, because until I read it that way, I never really saw it that way. I always thought, well, work is what you do. It's a part of life. But what it hit me when it said it's an idol, I went, of course it's an idol, because if it tells me that much, if it defines who I am that much, if I'm laying everything I have on those definitions, and I can't even look at myself the same in the mirror or know what to do with me or who I am or what value do I have, that is an idol.
Absolutely.
That is an idol.
So true. So true.
It breaks us from our greed.
Yeah.
The greed of our time.
Materialism too. The greed of, well, if I get these extra hours, then I'll get this much money, and then I can buy this new phone or
whatever.
Or
right?
whatever.
And again, I was a single mom at one time, and I had to work.
Yeah.
That's not what we're referring to here. We're talking about the greed of my time, my money, my possessions. It's a me life.
I worked real hard to earn this, so I should be able to enjoy it.
Right.
That mindset.
I deserve this.
I deserve this.
I deserve this. So that you sit in a day of Sabbath where it's what we deserve is to lay at the feet of our Father, and like you said, reflect, just cease and desist.
Well, and I'm going to even flip that script even more in a way, and I'm going to say what we deserve is to be destroyed by our work.
The wages of sin are death.
Is death.
Right.
But the gift of God is eternal life. So if I continue to feed that beast within me. And I don't mean to use it like metaphor.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, you know,
I get you.
I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I'm just playing into my own bondage in a way. Like I'm saying, no, I have to do this. Like I can't, no, you have to make room for the Father. You have to receive the gift of what he gives you. And it doesn't mean it has to happen on a certain day. I don't think, you know, or even for 24 hours, you know, I think it would look different for everybody, but no, we get to push back against that by no power of our own. This is the other thing. God is not asking us to do a superhuman thing. He's giving us space to be a human in his presence and put him in control. So the spirit, our own spirit, is restored and renewed. It's really beautiful, and it's a precious gift. You know, you think about the context of how the commandments even came about. The people, the Israelites, were in slavery, and the Egyptians hated them so much. It talks about it in Exodus 1, that they just basically worked them like dogs as hard as they could, 24/7, all the time, day, night, every day of the week, no rest at all, no rest.
And that's all they knew.
And that's all that they knew. And then God leads them out of slavery into the wilderness. And then he says, you get this day to do nothing except think about my goodness. And what's really interesting is that they really struggled because they were used to their striving. They were used to their enslavement.
Well, that's how they defined who they were. We were a slave to Pharaoh.
But I had onions and garlic, and that was good.
But at least I got to have some onions at the end of the day. You bring me out here, and you're going to give me a day off, and I have to eat manna.
Right. And I think we can be merciful about even that assessment too. We can say, like you said, it's all they knew. This was the rhythm of life for them. The rhythm of life was exhaustion, striving. You talk about being a single mother. I'm sure a lot of single mothers feel like, well, I don't really have a choice. Like, I have to do this. But what God says is, you do have a choice to make room for me.
Right.
And the beauty of it is we don't have the stringent, you know, restrictive laws that they had to follow to make that room. It can be a simple, beautiful thing, like taking a walk with your children, you know? So I think that's just really important to understand, that there's freedom in Sabbath, and it's just making room for God to do his work, or honestly, a break from the work that we have to do. You talk about it being an act of rebellion and resistance. Sometimes, I don't know if everyone feels this way. So I think very globally. So I get so weary of resisting the brokenness in the world, seeing it, not letting it like tarnish my spirit, or not getting weighed down by the sorrow, the grief of it all, or whatever. And Sabbath is a moment where you just rest in his goodness. You get a break from having to be on this crazy mission all the time to fight against evil and the enemy. No, you just dwell with other people who love the Lord or love you, and you take a moment to just breathe from the burden that it is to live on this earth, and enjoy his goodness and let him fill it. But if you've filled it with other stuff, you're not going to have room. And this is really interesting. When I was in college, that we were talking about, it was in one of my education classes, and they were talking about classroom time management. And so one of our professors, who's a believer, actually, that, you know, I don't know if that's here or there, but I think it's part of the discipline, had us do a time log and actually just log literally every minute of our day, what we did, where we went, how much time we spent on all these things. And I think that if a lot of us were to do that, we say, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Well, you got time to scroll on Instagram for 2 hours. Like,
we did that so when I was at Lone Star in the class I taught,
yeah,
that was one of their assignments. So in this EDUC class, pretty much the short version of this class is to make sure you're college ready.
Yeah.
So we give you tools and all kind of things, right? But that's one of the assignments. We still do that.
Yep.
And it's funny because the number one thing I hear is, I wasted so much time.
Yeah. And
I didn't realize.
Well, and that's what I noticed too. Because I thought about this. If we don't have time to spend 20 minutes in prayer, but we have time to binge watch 6 or 7 episodes, which is the length of 3 or 4 movies. Every day, some people do that. I've been the one that's done that. Or play a game on our phone, Candy Crush or whatever. And I know that just dated me, but that's fine.
Candy
I'm fine
Crush
with
is the best.
I'm an old lady. I don't care. But like, do we have time?
What are we making time for?
Yeah. And so that goes back to that idea of, if we thought of it, I love somebody said it, it's a purposeful pause in our life. If it was the first fruit of my time, if I set aside when I'm planning my week and I say, these 6 days is when I do everything, and this day is just off the table. And that day might be Tuesday one week. It might be Friday. It might be these 6 hours are off the table, whatever it is. But if we made a purposeful pause and we just held it as holy and sacred, which is what it says in scripture in multiple places, what could God do in that time? Because his resources are endless. He has no concept of time like we do. So even the time, he's like, oh, give me 2 minutes. Yep, I can do that, Yeah. I mean, he can accomplish anything that he wants. He's infinite. So I think we need to stop thinking of it as rationing of resources or something, and start realizing like, this is the moment where I am poured into, my emptiness is poured into, but you have to make room for that. And that's going to look different for different people.
Yeah, it's like a standing appointment.
Yeah.
Right? So like all these things people do, you're talking about, I do them, you do them. They're standing appointments. I'm going to do this, and I plan my day. Here's my appointments. Making a standing appointment with God is just like now the practice of tithing. When my money comes in, I don't even second guess. It's off the top done.
Because you've seen the benefit of it. You understand. And the blessing. I think that's the other thing. It's a blessing that's poured out.
Yeah, God's not asking to take something from me. Just like he's for Sabbath, he's this last week of my life, the Saturdays, he wasn't asking to take away from me. He was asking to meet me and pour into me.
Well, and the blessing of it too is when you make room, it makes room for others too. One of the dangers that we have is only viewing Sabbath, I think in American culture, especially this self-help kind of mindset of only viewing Sabbath as like this intensely personal thing. But if you look in Jewish culture, it's communal. This is why, a lot of people would consider the Sabbath day the day that they worship with other believers. So there's a sense of community here. And I think about what you were saying, like with your kids, for example. It's a perfect example of that. You had to personally make space, but when you had that space, you had the ability to give attention, to give love, to give mercy. Your child was sick. You had the space because in your mind that day was already set apart. So you weren't annoyed at your kid for being sick, right? You were annoyed that your plan got changed, but that was probably what God wanted to do. He probably wanted to upset it and say like, I have a plan for Sabbath, Right. We don't know what I don't want to, I'm not trying to dictate my purpose. Yeah. But what I'm saying is it's also about understanding that this is an opportunity for me to give to another person. I read one that I really loved. She talked about, take every day on Sabbath, write a letter to somebody that's a fellow believer and tell them who they are in Christ and that God loves them, or invite someone who doesn't have a family to come eat your crock pot meal with you. You know what I mean? Like we open ourselves up to the community that's so beautiful. And if you look at the traditional setup of Sabbath in Jewish culture, that's what they do. They pray together, they read scripture together, they worship together, they feast, they play games, they take naps, they take walks. So in contemporary right, Jewish culture, taking walks might have gotten in trouble before.
That might have been a little on the low side.
But so it's also understanding that if I only make it a personal introspective thing, I'm missing out on blessing too. It's about considering God as greater than everything else and letting him focus your attentions where he wants to. There may be times, I have times where my Sabbath is going to a mountaintop I wish in Houston, Texas, but going to a forest and looking at trees and considering who he is and the goodness. And that's what it looks like that day. Yeah. And then there's some days where it's an entire day of laughing. You know, I told you like last week after church, I was praying and God was like, take your dad to go look at wildflowers. And I was like, okay.
Don't twist my arm on that one.
Because I didn't have another agenda. I was able, I just said, yeah, that sounds great. And it was life-giving to my father, you know? So I think we need to, not underestimate what God can accomplish with the time that we give him. And I think we put limitations on it before we even bring it to him.
Absolutely.
And he's like, I see your limitations and I raise you my infiniteness.
Well, I mean, the perfect example was here. I was trying to plan a day of Sabbath, right? So I'm a planner, y'all. And my neighbors, I'll tell my neighbors, like, I took today off. And one of them will say, well, what did you do today? And I'll start listening. She's like, that's a day off?
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute. That's a day off. So even on my Sabbath, the very first Saturday, I was trying to put this in place.
I chastised you too, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I made plans to go do something, thinking I was in the right space, right? But like sitting through it this past week has been more of like, I had no plan.
No.
And even as uncomfortable as it felt sometimes, there was just this stillness of like, clearing my mind, clearing my head. Leah and I talked today about some things that that had come into play during the week, and
because you had space.
Because I had cleared the table.
You had space to be open to it. It's like when your email inbox gets full and they're like, delete it or you're not getting any more messages.
Right.
And we need to do that spiritually. That's what Sabbath is. It gives us a moment to delete the things that don't matter, or to put them in spam where they belong.
Well, and I know you and I hit on this during the week when we were talking. I don't know if you remember this, but we talked about how with the Israelites that Sabbath served as a visible sign of the covenant.
Yeah.
The covenant, the promise between God and the Israelites. So, I mean, if we want to take this deeper than just being a commandment that, you know, that God gave us a commandment, there's a reason why it's there. There's an importance of why it's there. But he practiced this with the Israelites as distinguishing. This was their covenant that distinguished them as his chosen people.
Yes. Yeah, they were different. Yeah, they were different. And the other thing that's interesting about that too is when we look even at the first account of Sabbath, that very beginning Genesis, is that the first several days he saw that the work he did was good, but the Sabbath he called holy. So that is what holy, in terms of what, you know, the traditional thought of holiness would have been, is set apart, right? So this day is a day where you own the holiness that God has gifted you. You hone it, you commune with him, and it sets you apart. It is an act of resistance against a culture, not necessarily a destructive act of resistance, although I do think it breaks chains. So it is destructive in that way.
Right.
But it makes you set apart and holy. And the other thing that's interesting is that basically, like, if you look at it, the tending of creation, all of that happened after he rested. So he just looked at what he'd done and then got to the business of making it function and work and stuff like that through man, using man and obviously his own sovereignty.
Well, again, it's going back, and if we look at today, right, 2024, and then we go back to the Israelites, it's the same for both of us. It's a countercultural practice. In both of these societies, if we look at the Israelites, we look at us, and now in society, labor, whether it's children labor or work labor or whatever you're doing.
Not child labor.
Yeah. Children having babies. We're not talking about, yes, thank you. Having babies, if we're using the word labor, right? It's equated with productivity and value. We've said it several times, right?
Yep.
So again, it's putting Sabbath and saying, hey, I'm going to challenge these cultural norms. That's what God was asking the Israelites to do. That's what he's asking us to do. It's challenge what you're sitting in, what the world values, what the world tells you is precious, what the world says, this is who you are. Take those and let's prioritize rest and worship over work.
And it redefines perspectives too, like what you're saying. But I think here's another thing important about it. If you look at like the rules of Sabbath given in Scripture, the Sabbath was applied to everyone. The slaves were not allowed to work. The livestock was not allowed to work. They would have called them like the foreigners in their land. They got to honor Sabbath too. So
it was a complete shutdown.
It's a complete shutdown, which totally levels the playing field.
Right.
So a rich person doesn't get more rest than a poor person. And our current culture has really gotten away from that. There was a time with the blue laws, even in the 50s, and I know that those have some negative connotations, but basically this idea that certain things were not done on Sunday, they weren't. Because of our the American history with Puritanism, their value on Sabbath was placed pretty high. So it was actually part of the reason why they felt like they had to leave where they were and come. So our link to that actually meant that even into the 19th century, even non-believers, Benjamin Franklin used to use the Sabbath to study and read. So it was a kind of a universal concept that offered rest, or really restoration. They would make art or be creative or work in their garden. There was all these different things. And then what happened is slowly over time, our need for convenience, the need for round-the-clock production, all of this stuff got in the way of it and started kind of winnowing out. I don't even know if that's a word. I don't know, whatever. It sounds good to me.
It's a new word.
As I'm saying it, I'm going, is that a word? But it started literally pushing out the discipline, the spiritual discipline of Sabbath, even in the church, right? So, my father would talk about it like they didn't go shopping on Sunday. They didn't. And he got in trouble once as a child for asking his dad, if we don't do anything on the Sabbath, why are we going out to eat? Somebody's having to work so we can eat. And he got in trouble for that.
Way to go, Dad.
But I think and I'm not coming at this from a place of legalism, but what I am coming at is from a place is that our need to consume and to produce has gotten in the way. I mean, when you think about the fact that they, in Jewish culture, they had that Jubilee year every 49 years where they literally did nothing. They let the land rest for a year. They forgave debts. They gave back property. There's a lot of freedom and rest in that, but it was across the board rest and freedom. And now we're like fighting for little, I call them pockets of peace, right? It's like, we just really need to shake it up and think about it. And what Sabbath does is it allows us to go, okay, where's my identity? Where's my purpose? But it's a day of rest, but it's also a day of freedom. And that's important. That's just really important for us to understand. I know I went a little all over the place there, but there's so much passion about this in my heart. Because I have a body that if I don't rest, it is catastrophically horrible. And right. I even need spiritual rest a lot too. And I don't have, right. So in that sense, I don't relate with you because I don't have a body that does that, but I have a mental state that if I don't do something that decompresses, then it can be catastrophic. Yeah. Not only for myself, but anybody in relationship with me. Yeah. And I teeter. I think my whole life I've teetered on playing a dangerous game with that. Mm-hmm. Right? Getting just close enough and then being like, oh, okay, well, I'll go do this over here, or I'll shift and go do this over here because it's something different. So it must be freeing, right? Because I'm not doing that thing. I just picked up something else. But I mean, I don't think you have to have a disability or even an issue to know that, this Sabbath is life-giving. Society is life-taking. That's right.
Our daily routine, we are, we're playing a game with a clock.
Well, and I'm going to go on that too for a minute, because I think the other thing to consider about this is the fact that even our clocks are being skewed. So we live in a global society. So there's always business going on everywhere. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's a challenge, right? We have electric lights. Used to be sundown, they were done. Now we have electric lights. We can stay up all night. We have technology at our fingertips 24/7. We have internet at our, I remember waiting all week to watch the next show in a series.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
You had to wait a whole week.
Yeah. We don't even have that anymore. Nope. So the natural rhythm of even day and night is gone.
Oh, that's a good point.
And if you talk to any neuroscientist or even psychologist, right? Like the night shift is considered a health hazard.
That's why they get paid more money
Right.
for the night shift.
And I'm not actually knocking anyone. You really, honestly, God bless you if you work a night shift. My father did that for a long time, right? But even the circadian rhythm of the body is being interrupted by productivity. So this is a time where we literally get to reset. And like I said, it might look different for different people. I don't think we have to get stuck into the legalism of that.
No.
But I do think it's really important. When we think about any of that, I mean, I'm trying to formulate the thought here, but basically this idea of a day and a night, is just this idea of like a time of being alert and a time of resting. And it's necessary for all stages of growth, even in plant life. You look at it, there's not a single animal that never sleeps, right? I mean, we have rest as part of a natural rhythm that makes our literal biology tick. And one of the people I was reading talked about how literally Sabbath is the creation's saving grace. It allows us to be restored and renewed.
It helps us to flourish. Flourish is such a big word.
And bear fruit.
We can flourish.
And bear fruit. Yeah. I mean, anyone who struggles with insomnia even would tell you it is impossible to think clearly, to create stuff, to do any of that if you're not adequately rested. I think that we have a very unrealistic and merciless view of time in our society.
I think we have a very bad relationship with time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've created a distorted relationship with time, because I was reading where somebody said, think about what you say. Well, I don't have enough time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do I have?
Well, even we say, I'm going to take time off.
And I don't know about you guys, but anytime I've taken time off for a vacation, I've usually come back more tired than
exhausted.
I was before my vacation.
Because we strive to make the vacation as awesome as possible, because it's the only pocket of time that we gave.
Yeah. So it's got to be perfect. It's got to be in line. It's got to be control. I just keep circling back to we are controlling every aspect. And so to take a day, I think for people to think to take a day means they have to give up control. They have to sit in it. Like, how scary is that?
Yeah.
But then when you really say that out of your mouth and you go, I think it's more scarier that we're scared to not be in control for a period of time.
We're acknowledging the source of the one who's actually in control. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
So if I can't make room for that, I do need to examine my own spirit and see why can't I make room for God to be in control? And I speak this from a place of really grace and mercy, because I am a walking example of what workism and not making room can do. I literally physically can no longer work. Now, I had other challenges going into that, and I kept asking God for balance, but I had my hands tightly grasped around everything I was doing. I was not willing to give on anything to make it possible. And it literally wrecked my body. So, I speak from a place of humility on this, not arrogance or pride. I learned a really hard lesson, and I understand for some people, they're probably thinking, well, yeah, it's great for you to talk about rest. You were able to stop working, and that's fair. I get that. I have other work I do now. It's just, I don't get a paycheck for it.
I can relate.
Yeah. As a nonprofit, literally
but
right now.
But isn't it funny? I mean, so Leah and I have a lot of things in common like that, but isn't it funny how God took two people, and now clearly the two different avenues, right? I have my own struggles. You have your own things.
Yeah.
But he took two people who were so driven, so very driven in work.
I am extremely driven.
Oh,
yeah.
so am I.
Yeah.
So driven. I mean, when I have a project on the table, boy, you can just close out anything else. Like, that's it. Like, I am in it to win it, right?
I am too.
But he took the two of us and said, yeah, no more. And and guess what? The value is not going to come from a paycheck anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to come from where I'm meeting you in things and teaching you. And let me tell you, now clearly, again, like you said, we're both in a position where we can do that. Because
and many people aren't. I'm not actually knocking that at all, but I would say if it's necessary for your survival, it's even more important at that point that you give some of that time to the Lord, because there's a lot there's a lot at stake at what you're devoting your time to. It's not always bad things, it's really not.
No.
And so, but, oh my goodness, how much more important is it for someone who carries that whole burden, to have a little room where they get to lay it down. Like, don't think that because of your financial status, you don't deserve just a moment in God's presence, even if it's just in the shower before you go to your next job.
And let me tell y'all, some amazing things can happen if you just have shower time. I can speak truth into that.
Other than getting rid of body odor and actually being presentable.
Clean, right. Other than being clean and smelling good when you come out. There are some times where, you guys, I don't even get to go to the bathroom alone.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's a little too much information here.
Every mother's like, amen.
Yeah. I don't get to go to the bathroom.
And probably a lot of the fathers there too.
Yeah. But there are those quiet, peaceful moments in the shower where God tells me some profound things.
Yep.
But because it is a complete moment. And so I'm thinking, if God can do that with shower time,
anytime,
right?
Anytime,
he can do anytime. It doesn't have to just be. It doesn't, again, like, just because I took a Saturday and I tried to do it on a Saturday and then I was able to do this week, that doesn't mean that's your plan. That doesn't mean that's what works for you.
But I think this idea is that if we look all throughout Scripture, the idea of rest is always there. Even Jesus himself, who was fully God, had to rest. It's not that God is asking us to do something he didn't do himself. He recognizes that. Jesus lived in a human body. He recognizes the exhaustion, the pain, the disciples and him not always knowing where their meal was going to come from. They even got in trouble for picking wheat off a stalk on the Sabbath because it was technically work. And Jesus was like, we got to eat, guys. Sorry, this is not a harvest. They were trying to take their meal from where they got it too. And so I think it's just important to understand this is something that God himself modeled, that Jesus himself understood the physical need for it. And we need to give it the value that it deserves, because there's consequences, and they're not just physical. They're relational, they're emotional, they're spiritual. So it's really, really important for us to remember that and to not underestimate what God can do with the time. It's interesting that frequently in Old Testament literature and stuff, and just in Jewish society, they would refer to the promised land as the rest. So we're going to go to the rest, or we're going to go through the rest. What's interesting is when they arrived at the place of rest, which I think is what they called it right before, I think it was when Joshua, they arrive at the place of rest, when they actually get to go in. The message about rest doesn't end. The message of rest continues all throughout the rest of Scripture. And what that means is that even that promised land, whether it was the physical land,
right,
the promise of rest and provision doesn't stop in Canaan. It continues. It continues in Christ. It continues in heaven. We always have a promise of rest. That's why he says, come to me, lay it down. So if you're listening and you're weary, ask the Father to fill it. Lay it down. Tell him you're weary. That's part of what Sabbath is for too. It is hard to live on this earth, right? But there's literally nothing broken he can't fill. Like nothing. So even the broken state of mankind, our messed up priorities, or just the brokenness of life that sometimes affect us, it's still something he can fill and he can use. I love the scripture in Ephesians 2 when it talks about that our salvation is a gift of God, and it's not by the works that we do, lest anyone should boast. That that's the scripture a lot of people quote. And then it says that for we are his workmanship, and we're created by him to complete the works that he already established in advance. And all we have to do is walk in it. And this is what's just important to understand. He's the one that equips us with the strength. If you are so weary you can't function, check in with the source of strength And most of us, I would say, it's fair to assume in current culture are weary to the point that we cannot go on, and we just keep powering through. Just
pushing and pushing.
Drink.
And pushing.
I mean, the fact that Red Bull exists. Really.
Wings. It gives you wings, Leah.
Right? But I'm saying, like, we just keep trying to find ways to feed the frenzy. And instead, what if we thought about it, that he equips us to do the works in advance? Philippians, it says he's giving us the power to do what pleases him. Striving comes in lots of shapes and sizes, right? It can be completely secular, or it can be a sacred striving, even where you are doing good things, but they're not necessarily God things, you know? And I think it's just important for us to understand those who wait upon the Lord renew their strength. You see this doctrine of rest all throughout. It says, rest in him, focus on me, dwell in me. So there is a promise of freedom, of strength, of joy, of hope, of purpose, but it comes from dwelling, not striving. That's really important. That's really important.
So I found there was a Jewish theologian, Abraham Herschel, and he stated that Sabbath is not for the recovering strength once lost,
yes,
or even becoming fit for the future labor to come.
Mm-hmm.
Sabbath is a day for the sake of life, for the sake of life.
Yeah.
Practicing for life's purpose, which is to rest in the Lord eternally.
Yep.
It's like you said, it's not, your strength doesn't come from the Red Bull that pushes you through to the next day, or to hit the deadline to meet the red eye flight you got to catch to get to the next thing, right? It is simply to rest in the Lord.
And it's not unrealistic to focus on the fact that life requires work. Okay. So it's not the fact that life requires work that's the problem. It's, am I allowing God to make every single moment holy? So how do we rest? How do we rest in Christ when we're striving and working? You know, some of us work very strenuous jobs, or just life is really strenuous. You might be fighting an illness, or, you know, there's all sorts of things. But it's understanding that he makes literally every moment holy. Going back to that idea of considering the ravens, even a bird sitting on a wire and you looking at it can become a holy moment. It doesn't have to look like, you know, going, like you said, going into a dark room and staring at darkness. You know what I mean? Like, he can make any moment holy. So we can live even in the necessary hustle and bustle of life.
So I went, the teacher in me, the researcher in me, was, as I was digging, I came across a lot of different studies. And so, because I think it's real easy for people to hear all this and be like, well, that's great and wonderful, but like practically in the real world, guys, there's research on this.
Oh yeah, there is.
There is research. There are studies, medical journals, where I'm not talking about just theologians in Bible school, right? One that was done recently was 1,300 Christian schools across the U.S., Canada, Indonesia. They found a significant relationship between Sabbath keeping, the teacher being a Sabbath keeper, and burnout being reduced.
Yep.
So these are Christian schools that, you know, not every teacher in a Christian school keeps Sabbath. Let's just put it out there,
no,
right?
It's
but
real.
They found the ones that found like they had found a connection with it and practiced it. And even some of them, let me even give you the lowdown on it. Some of them even said they're still bad about checking their email or grading a paper, but they really do try to take the time. And so it said that, do you understand the word significant? We're not talking like 1%. We're talking about a major percent across, not just in the U.S., other places, that burnout was just way reduced. And if you've ever been a teacher, burnout's a real thing.
Oh my gosh. That's what I was joking about before we started, that I used to call it the winter and summer sabbatical. Like people who knock teachers, oh, but you get 3 months off. I was like, don't even.
Oh, exactly. How dare
it's
you?
not. No, I'm recovering and I'm making the game plan for the next battle.
Right.
Like,
and this wasn't the only one. I mean, I was going back 2012. There have been so many studies that even just look at prayer or Sabbath, somewhere where people are laying down who they are.
Yep.
And picking up who God is.
Yeah.
And saying, I need this.
Yep.
To be able to move forward.
Yep, that's right.
I need this time. I need this relationship. And nowhere does it say it's for a day. It's for 4 hours. I think it's like, again, I hate to keep bringing up tithing because, tithing is such a time in tithing. You just don't mess with people's time or their money, right?
But we say time and talents. So it is a common buzzword we use in the church. You give of your time and your talents. That's what a lot of people will say. What are we doing with the time? Does church count? We're done. You know what I got to think about that too.
Yeah. But it's when, like Leah said, when you give your money and you see how God stretches or how God makes things connect. I call it funny math.
Yeah.
When you're introduced to the class of funny math, you look at money in a very different way, right? To see what God can do with what you have.
Well, God literally made time stand still before too. So he's the Lord of time.
Yeah.
So he can take 5 minutes and make a miracle. But he can take there's 6 hours and make a miracle too.
And so my point to the tithe was this, is that a lot of people, when people start to tithe, they think they have to jump into the whole 10%, right? And I've seen and I've heard lots of different people say, start here.
Worked out, yeah.
Start here and work into it.
Yeah.
So maybe you have gotten yourself in some money problems and you can only, maybe that's just the reality, but you have to start somewhere. And so for this, it's the same concept is, you got to start somewhere, because if you're not doing it at all, you are breaking a commandment. That is, let's just put it out there. It's out there. But bigger than, I would say, not that that's not big enough, but you're missing out on such an invitation to see God work and move.
Well, and to watch him multiply,
to watch him do things that you can't even imagine.
I mean, I think about the just the gift, even of like going on that ride with my dad. I saw him laughing. He was excited. He was having so much joy. We were out in nature together. We took a whole bunch of pictures. I have a memory, and that was multiplied. I had been working at your tournament the day before that. And with my health challenges, I should have been exhausted. I was invigorated. And so it can drastically shift the focus of your heart, your spirit, your even your body itself. It releases endorphins when you experience joy with somebody else. So I think, I mean, we're driving it home, but I think it's just really important to understand that there's a reason this was a natural rhythm from the very beginning, that a discipline that God instituted before man was even around. Man was around, but before the relationship the fall of man was even around. Right. Sorry. Yeah.
So let's talk about practical application. Because I think, again, we can get caught up in how does this work for me? Right. And so maybe you don't know where to start. And I think Leah brought up a good point, like something that happens in schools and classes, and especially in college level classes. Maybe do a time assessment.
It's pretty amazing. You can realize even how much time you just spend scrolling through your phone.
Yeah. It starts as I'm going to look at this and turns into a 5-hour marathon.
Well, let's be real. Most of the time that scrolling is not feeding your soul. Usually it's making you resist against sin. It's making you envious. It's making you wish somebody else had something you don't. You're having to not give in to temptation on things. You're having to push back against wanting to buy that thing you see. It fuels something different. What if we were scrolling scripture?
I saw a girl that said, what if every time you had the urge to pick up your phone, you picked up your Bible?
Yeah.
And that really hit me hard. I went, ooh, I would be walking around with my Bible in my hand 24/7. Imagine that.
Well, maybe you try that for a period of time. I think this is we're Protestant, but Lent, things like that. If it's practiced with a good, gospel focus in mind, it's about doing without to fill with something, and you're choosing to identify something that stands in the way for you,
Yeah. So for me overall, for a practical application, if you're trying to incorporate Sabbath into your life, if it's something you say, okay, I'll buy into this. I'm that kind of person. I'll try it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm a doer. So let's see. It's things just setting aside a dedicated time for rest and reflection. It is disconnecting from technology. Yes, you can do that.
That's actually big. Yeah.
You can actually put it down. Nothing's going to change on Facebook. There's not going to be a new TikTok dance that you're going to miss. TikTok shop is not going to blow up. Instagram will still be there, and all the people you follow will still be there. I mean, like,
hopefully
the world,
they'll be following Sabbath too.
like the world is not going to explode if you put it down, right? Like, if you don't check your email, you're still going to be okay. And I know this because I'm still breathing, and I didn't check mine.
Well, and this is something that until even 30 years ago, we were already doing. You know, it used to be completely unheard of for your boss to reach out to you outside of work hours at home. You didn't call someone during dinner hour. You know, even now I'm thinking, I just sent that text at 10:45 at night. I'm assuming the person has it on silent, but it's like those boundaries that used to just be in place aren't even there anymore.
And totally just disregarded.
And so what it means is that we have to set those boundaries for ourselves.
It's stepping into activities that nourish your soul. And so we're going to take this to PG-13. When we were looking at the book, The Beautiful Resistance.
Great book, yeah.
It talks about what Leah was saying earlier about it doesn't have to be just about self, right? It's not just you disconnecting. You can be in a community of people, but it talks about marriage.
Yeah.
And we all know one of the benefits of marriage, right? Just trying to keep it
physical intimacy.
Yes. So it could even be creating that space where maybe you and your spouse, it's hard during the week. You're connecting. I mean, that's what Sabbath is. It's a connection. It's a connection with God. It's a connection with people in your life. It's a connection with community. It doesn't mean, again, that we're selfish and doing all this self-health and self-reflect. It's all about me today. Stay away from me. That's not it at all.
We're so big on me time and self, all that stuff right now. And I'm not actually knocking that. But if I'm having, what I've realized for myself is if I'm having me time, I got to invite the Lord into that. Yeah. If I am at a place where I need me time to recover, if I want that to actually be super effective, the Lord needs to be invited into that.
You got to make room for him to be able to show up, most definitely. And again, you can, start small.
Yeah.
Find that, maybe if it is even just putting you go to get on there because you got a couple of minutes, you just sit it down and you say, you know what, I'm just going to take a breather here. I'm going to ask you, Lord, how do I make room for you? How do I do that? What is the steps in that? Is it going to a friend's house and do, playing cards or laughing or just visiting? What if you, just stop by to say, hey, I just came by to say hello. I wanted to check in on you. Writing letters, like you said, playing a board game with your children. Oh my gosh.
And they love that. They love the attention.
Love it. They're like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like all eyes are on me. I mean, that's what I've noticed for myself.
That's what they're competing for all week.
All week they're competing to be a part of that time slot with me.
You're giving them Sabbath too. This is the other thing that we realize. If I start valuing Sabbath in my own life, I end up gifting Sabbath to my husband, who doesn't have to do the yard work that I would normally ask him to do that day. Or to my children, if I had children, you're gifting them an opportunity to rest and enjoy relationship and the goodness of God, because everything else is striving and working and trying to basically make the tugs of creation bend to our will, this is a case where we don't have to resist against that. One of the resources I was reading said that there's really 4 approaches to Sabbath that can be super helpful. One was just this idea of ceasing. You're ceasing from work, but you can also cease from this pressure to be productive, anxiety or tension. They talked about examples of this would be, if you clean your house, you clean and prepare your home in advance. And on that day or that time, you don't do it. Some people even were suggesting that if you have some unfinished projects, you just put them away. So they're not a constant reminder of what you want to be doing otherwise. Writing down your concerns, like you were talking about when you took your Sabbath, you just started making a list and you'll check it off on Monday, tomorrow, the next day. So maybe it's writing down and setting aside concerns. So it starts just redoing that. So ceasing is one. Resting. Rest, Jesus didn't even look at healing or rest as work. but it was a time for restoration. So you want to make sure that however you observe Sabbath, it's a time that provides spiritual, physical, emotional, intellectual, and even maybe social rest. So, and it doesn't have to necessarily tick all those boxes, but basically you're going to think about it. I'm going to rest myself from work by going to play a game, or I'm going to rest myself from work by taking a walk, whatever it is. Just for some people, it's also creating, craft or something, and you can do that with kids, stuff like that. So it might be that for you. For the basically embracing other things. Usually we don't have time to do that. We're always trying to get to the next thing. But we see that the ministry of Jesus, part of why he was able to do the work that he was called to do is because he didn't look at interruptions as like something that got in the way of his predestined idea of what he needed to do. He recognized that he needed to embrace that moment with that person and heal them on the way to where he was going. And so those moments, if we embrace those moments instead of looking at the Sabbath as an inconvenience, for example, we start to realize, oh, now I have room to listen to my spouse talk about this thing, or to go do this with my kid, or to say hello to my neighbor instead of putting on my headphones and mowing the yard and not paying attention to anyone, things like that. And then finally, the idea of feasting. We see that discipline all throughout. They feasted together. They prepared the meal in advance, or, so they didn't have to do it the day of, and they just enjoyed celebrating each other's company. And feasting, but that can also be things like feasting on music or art, or like we talked about, like a spouse, I don't mean it in a nasty way, but I just mean enjoying the fruit of love and relationship and cultivating intimacy. Or just spending more time with your children, or fellowship, feasting on fellowship. Sometimes it is true that our lives just get so crazy, and we need that fellowship time with each other. And that's a time we can do that if we make room for it, but we have to make room for it.
So that's the challenge.
It is.
The resisting of the work. It's creating within yourself a space and a place that says, on this, like you said, on this day, this moment, this time, this, who cares, wherever you do it, I'm going to resist.
Yep.
And I'm going to sit in Shabbat.
Yep.
And I'm going to taste and see that God is good.
I'm going to dwell, the other nuach, if that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, we're still stuck on that.
But I think too, you can just make a list of the things that you normally have to resist against, because you may not even realize, like for you, it took you actually saying, I'm going to try this, to realize how many things you were actually resisting against you didn't.
Yeah.
I had a recent experience where I realized how much I have to resist against fear and anxiety. And the only time I realized that was on a walk, listening to the wind. So there's, guidelines for this.
Yeah. And again, it could be simple for you. Could be as simple as making a time journal and look into where you spend your time. Maybe you already know where you spend your time. Like I don't have to make a time journal. I know what my days look like because they repeat over and over and over again. But it was making an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Making an adjustment to the time that I had in place already.
Yeah.
So it's unique to each person. There's not a one size fits all, shape all, time all. I think you have to really go before the Lord, just like you do with your money, your time, your tithe, and you say, Lord, can you help me to know how this is unique for me?
Search me, know my hearts, test my anxious thoughts, show me what I need to do. I've been thinking a lot about Elijah lately, in the story of Elijah, and he was just so weary from the work and felt like he had failed at everything. And he had been working so hard, and he was just faced with defeat after defeat after defeat. And he runs away, and he's like under the fig tree, or I think it was a fig tree. And he's like, I just want to die. Just make it over. I have clearly failed at my mission. Right. That woman is barreling down on me. I'm going to be dead before you know it. And I didn't do anything. So you can just let me die. And instead God sends a messenger, an angel, it says, just take a nap under this tree. And when he wakes up, there's bread and water. And then Elijah starts again, Good
old Elijah.
And what does he do again? Go back to sleep. You're not rested yet. Now nourish yourself. Then he gets him ready for the journey. And this is what I love about this. He does this big, long journey to the mountain, and then he encounters the glory of God. God passes by. But it's not in wind, fire, earthquake. It's small, that still small voice, which is exactly what his weary soul needed. He had already had nourishment. Then he had this long journey. And while he was on that journey, he was probably I think they say it was a 40-day journey. So he was thinking about lots of things, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure there's some guy that's behind that rock that's going to kill me. The worries of the world and everything like that. But the time that God met him, the way that God met him was that still, small, quiet voice. And if he had been so focused on noise, or frankly, creating noise, you talk about people seeking out New York for the lights and the flashing sounds and the noise. Oh, it's so exciting. Could you hear God in that? Like, you know what I mean? And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, sometimes we're looking for big, huge, loud, like knock us straight moments. And he's like, hi, I'm here. You're tired. Why would I yell at you right now? That's like the interaction I had with him. You're afraid and you're hurting. Why would I use more pain to speak to you right now, Leah? I want to give you assurance. I want to give you peace and rest. That's how I want to talk to you. Would you stop assuming I'm going to do it in this other way? And it's Sabbath. That's what it is. He's saying, do things differently. Just give me this time and watch what I do with it. Watch what I do with it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect way to segue into wrapping up, because I think you just said it beautifully. So clearly today we wanted to just come with you and explain what we felt like the gift of Sabbath was, a Sabbath rest.
It really is a gift. Yeah.
And the main point, if you're saying, well, what was the main point of all this, is to invite you to embark on this journey. Consider it. Maybe you don't start tomorrow. Maybe you don't start this week, but what about considering this journey of spiritual renewal and transformation? I would encourage you to go do your own research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go read and see where the Spirit takes you. I know that I usually start on a Google search, and then the Spirit starts moving, and I end up finding all kind of other things that I'm blown away with. Mm-hmm. But mainly, it's just to say, consider.
And I think the other word of advice I would give on that is, if you start to consider and resistance pops up in your mind, oh yeah, I can't do it because of that. Look at that. Look at that.
That's good.
If you have something that's preventing you from a God-ordained, modeled discipline that he told you is necessary for life, and you meet it with instant resistance, whatever it is, think on that and why that is a path of resistance. Because it usually leads us to understanding more about what we're up against spiritually, emotionally, even physically. And the walk of faith that we're called to means that we give all of it to him. So whatever that thing that pops up in your head is something that he is God over and he is sovereign over. And it's an area where the faith may need to grow, or the trust in his provision may need to happen, or patience, or, there's all sorts of things it could be. But you wouldn't necessarily get there unless you contemplated Sabbath.
Yeah. So we're just inviting you to think on it, dwell on it, think on it, research it, look at the roadblocks.
Yeah.
See what you're up against. But mainly it's an invitation to draw nearer to God.
Yeah. And it's not an invitation for condemnation or shame. And I think that's a very important thing. God does not deal in condemnation. We have a choice to follow him, and that gift is open freely. Remember what I said, the rest was present from the beginning, and it's still present. Hundreds of years after they entered the promised land that they referred to as the place of rest, David was inviting people into rest. So this is something that is still very much alive and very much a possibility. It doesn't just come in heaven. It does come in heaven, but it can be here on earth, and that's what Sabbath does.
Yep. So I think it's only fitting, Leah, would you close us in prayer, and then we will we'll wrap up.
All right.
All right.
Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for the gift of Sabbath. I thank you that you took something that we made a curse and you gave us an opportunity to have a break from it, a rest from it. God, I just ask that you would help each person listening here, myself and Miranda included, to not lose sight of the purpose of Sabbath rest. I pray that you would open our eyes to the things in our lives, in our hearts, and our minds, and our spirits that get in the way of experiencing it fully. And I pray that you would just begin to break those bondages that hold us and keep us from experiencing really abundance and freedom in you. Lord, I just pray that you would speak to each person individually who's listening to this. Remind them of your goodness, your love, and help them make room for Sabbath. Teach us more and more about who you are and what you want for us. Just help us to learn how to listen for you, to make room for you. And would you also just make us wiser about how the demands of work or life get in the way of true communion with you. God, I pray that you would just enrich our lives with more of you, and please multiply the time that we give you and work miracles and show your glory. That's what we want, God. We just want more of you. I also just ask that if anyone has listened to this and is feeling a sense of shame or condemnation, I ask that you would just help them to feel freedom and love and mercy and grace that comes directly from your heart, that you understand the challenges that we face and you are right there ready to offer rest regardless of how we've done things before. We know that when we choose to put our faith in Jesus Christ, we receive rest. The very message of the gospel itself is rest. May we never forget that. Thank you so much. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And as always, guys, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, maybe if you're struggling with some of this and you want some resources, you can always go to www.steppingforwardfwd.org and go to our contact form where you can reach out to us and we will reach back out to you. Leah and I both want to thank you for joining us today on this journey through the biblical significance of the Sabbath. We both hope that each of you find rest and renewal in God's presence as we embrace the rhythms of rest that God has ordained for us. And until next time when we chat again, want to tell her bye, Leah?
Bye.
See you later. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Southern Soul Chats. We hope you found inspiration, encouragement, and valuable insights to carry with you through your week. We invite you to subscribe to Southern Soul Chats so that you never miss an episode. We are a branch of Stepping Forward Ministries, a 501c3 Christian nonprofit, and we kindly ask for you to consider making a donation today. Your contribution will play a vital role in sustaining the podcast and allowing us to continue sharing these impactful stories of faith. As you leave today, remember your story is a part of a bigger narrative and your faith has power to guide your path. Keep stepping forward with hope, trust, and assurance that you're never alone. This is Dr. Miranda Ferguson. We hope you have a great week and keep stepping forward.